J-Rob personally put through his workout at his pro day?
That would be Zaven Collins. That's correct.
That would be Zaven Collins, who is not guaranteed to be with the team past next year. Both of the Titans' current starting inside linebackers. So you draft Zaven Collins, and this year you put him at edge sometimes. I mean, this guy at his pro day bulked up to 270. This is an off-ball linebacker who's every bit the athlete that is required in the NFL to play off-ball linebacker, including coverage, but who bulked up to 270 for his pro day. That's who you plug and play. You can plug him in at edge this year, move him around a little bit like Vrabel will love to do, and then next year he takes one of those two inside linebacker spots, and he's a solid pro for the next 10 years.
Appreciate the call, Jonathan. 615-737-1045. Yeah, who he's talking about is Zaven Collins, the Tulsa linebacker, who John Robinson at Zaven Collins Pro Day did personally work out. He got a little Vrabel in him. He put on the chest pad. Now, J-Rob got a little extra heft to him nowadays. So, but it's
I'm
good
not saying that out loud.
Good to see. I mean,
especially considering my own waistline.
Well, yeah, the pandemic has not been kind to anybody, it seems.
Whiskey. The safe word is whiskey.
No, John makes jokes about his weight all the time, so hopefully he's not pissed about that. Anyway, 615-737-1045. Does that make sense to you, what Jonathan just laid out?
Yeah, actually. Collins is one of those guys where if you think Caleb Farley, Patrick Surtain, J.C. Horn are the three best corners in the draft, and they're the top guys on your board. Again, this goes to what we were talking about last segment. You don't know John Robinson's board, so don't pretend like you do. You're not a medical doctor, so don't pretend like you are.
Who are you yelling at?
The whole world.
Okay.
The internet, I don't know. Just everybody that thinks they're a doctor and thinks they know what John Robinson is valuing.
Sure.
And we can argue about it after the fact. Hey, he did this right, he did this wrong. We don't like that decision to trade, didn't trade, whatever. But you don't know where he values guys. And if those are the top three corners on his board that he views as an outside starting number one corner, which in my opinion is the team's biggest need, and they're not on the board, then you've got to move down and figure out what's your next best position of need versus best player available. And I'm sorry, the wide receiver is just not, like, you talk about the player who will not be named and sort of the PTSD that goes with that.
Yes.
Don't take a Georgia player. Oh, my God. Don't take a tackle. Oh, my God.
Don't take an outside linebacker from Clemson.
I like Elijah Moore, but I think there's some inverse of that. I think there's the opposite of that happening. Oh, he's buddies with A.J. Brown, and he played at Ole Miss. Well, that worked last time. I'm sure it's going to work again this time.
Right.
It's the opposite of the negative with the pick last year is how positive everybody feels about A.J. Brown. Elijah Moore is a good player. I don't think he's worth it at 22 when you can get basically the same player at 53 and a couple of different guys. Rondell Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's a lot of guys there. Zaven Collins is probably the best inside middle linebacker in the class, and there's a huge drop-off after him probably. And so if that's the guy you want at that position to fill a need for 10 years, you could do a lot worse. And this is a guy, you talk about Jayon Brown, where he remember that Colts game? I think it was the last week of the regular season 2 years ago. 3 years ago, maybe, where he basically single-handedly almost got them into the...
that was the Blaine Gabbert game.
And he, as a fantasy player, and I don't care about fantasy stats, but I'm just using this to explain Jayon Brown's productivity, right? Sacks, tackles for loss, passes deflected, interceptions, tackles, in-space, coverage, behind the line of scrimmage, does all that stuff. That's what Zaven Collins does, and he's not 6 foot 225.
Right.
Like that's
he's a full-size linebacker.
That's Jayon Brown's biggest drawback, and actually he doesn't have a lot of them. But Collins is Jayon Brown with size. And, again, 12 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 4 interceptions, single-handedly almost beat Oklahoma State this year, which is a pretty good team in the Big 12. Tulsa almost beat Cincinnati in the AAC. And Zaven Collins, because of their defense, it was because of him.
Cincinnati, who should, of course, have been in the college football playoff.
Yeah, sure, dude. Whatever. Play somebody.
615-737. Oh,
come to the SEC and play 10 games.
Snob. 615-737. Would you shut up while I give the phone number out? 615-737-1045. Reset. God, Braden, that obnoxious strident tone that is already wearing thin on me is Braden Gall of 440 Sports. Make sure you follow him at Braden Gall. 615-737-1045. Who are the Titans going to select? So what do you make of the linebacker from Notre Dame? I will just call him JOK. When you talk about the drop-off between inside linebackers, because that's a position that we've spent some time on this show talking about. I've seen Albert Breer mock him to the Titans. I've seen Peter Schrager do the same. And people don't look at inside linebacker as a position that the Titans should draft because you have Rashaan Evans, you have David Long, and you have Jayon Brown. But of all of the fifth-year options that I've seen picked up today or over the last couple of days, in fact, I tweeted out a full list of those. None of them are named Rashaan Evans. We are almost halfway through the 2018 first round without a selection or without the fifth-year option of Rashaan Evans being picked up. Baker Mayfield, Saquon Barkley, Denzel Ward, Quentin Nelson, Roquan Smith, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Vita Vea, Daron Payne, Mike McGlinchey, Frank Ragnow, and Colton Miller of the Raiders was extended. Rashaan Evans sitting out there and waiting. Jayon Brown's a free agent again next year. He's probably going to price himself out in a way that the pandemic made it nearly impossible for him to price himself out this year. And David Long, I'm sorry, I know Titans fans like him, but I just don't think he's there. Like, I see too many deficiencies, not just from a size perspective, but he's got a lot of learning to do about how to better play action.
I mean, I love the attitude that he plays with.
Sure.
And stepping in when Brown got hurt and doing what he did. You know, I know the boy's coming up a little bit later on, but, you know.
Oh, Will?
that game changed when David Long stepped into the the starting lineup.
I can't wait to give him so much crap when he sits down because they yanked the green dot from him after a draw.
Yeah, okay. I'll just move on. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah plays at Notre Dame, and he's a little undersized compared to Collins. He can play. The beauty of him, and if you watch the Notre Dame game, or the Alabama game, in the playoff, where Notre Dame actually held their own. I think Nick Saban sort of let off the gas pedal a little bit, to be honest with you. But Notre Dame held their own, and if you notice, they would line him up in the B gap in between the tackle and the end. They would stunt him inside. They would bring him off the edge. He's one of those guys that can kind of do all of it. He's not much bigger than Jayon Brown, a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical than Jayon Brown, but
longer.
But has a very similar. And they'll put some weight on him, but he's got longer arms. I just think he's a guy that you can do everything with. I don't think he's there.
Yeah.
I don't think he's available at 22, honestly. Like, if you're asking me where do I think he's a top 12, top 15 talent. So if he's available, hell yeah, sign me up. Give me that dude. But because Clark Lee, the head coach at Vanderbilt now, was responsible for developing him. And one of the best, I talked to Matt Miller about this, NFL draft scout, and he said the guy who develops players better than anybody in college football right now, doesn't get enough credit for it, is Brian Kelly. And those guys he was a big-time recruit, but that's a dude I would be totally satisfied with him if I'm a Titans fan. Not a huge position of need, but totally satisfied with that pick.
615-737-1045. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved in the conversation. We go next to Danny in Murfreesboro with a prediction. What's up, Danny? Good morning.
Hey, what's up, guys? So I think that a lot of what's going to happen in the draft tonight is going to depend on what happens with pick number 4 if a quarterback goes there. Because I think if a quarterback goes at 4, Cincinnati's going to surprise people and go with Pitts over Chase or Sewell, and it's going to realign everything. But honestly, my biggest hope for the Titans is they get Newsome. I think that he's a top corner in this draft. If Surtain falls down to him, that's fine with me too. But best player available at cornerback seems to be the need in my eye.
Appreciate the call, Danny. 615-737-1045. Greg Newsome, I really like. Don Davenport has been obsessed with him from a player perspective for the Titans in all of the mock drafts that we have all been forced to do at this point. Shout out to Chattanooga Whiskey.
Great. That 111 is fire, baby. Yeah. Listen, all the athleticism, all the headiness that you want from a player coming into the league who knows how to be a professional. Didn't play a ton of games, which is a concern. Doesn't have a ton of experience. But I think the question I have, and this is where I would I just want to get my hands on John Robinson's big board. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, they gave a tour. They put it out for social media content. John Robinson giving a tour of the temporary draft facility, and the big board is covered up in giant blackout blinds.
So here's my question about Newsome. I think he's the best of the second tier of cornerbacks. The question is, how high up John Robinson board is that second tier?
Right.
Like, you give me...
As opposed to in the later round.
Exactly. Like, Eric Stokes out of Georgia is a really nice player, a really nice corner. Tyson Campbell out of Georgia, both those guys are really nice options for the Titans at 53 if they're both available. Asante Samuel Jr. I don't think is going to be there at 53. I think the foot speed and the quickness is going to move him up boards. But, again, this is all about what John Robinson evaluates. I love Greg Newsome, too. But if he is sort of viewed closer to that second-round tier of players... Or is he viewed by John Robinson closer to J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain and Caleb Farley? So that's the question I have. Like, we just don't know where these guys are ranked on boards. This is the same thing with Christian Barrymore. Like, is he 51 on most people's boards, or is he 18 on most people's boards? We just don't know.
If you read any of the reports that are being put out in the media, you would think that every draft evaluator, every scout on an NFL team hates Christian Barmore.
Yeah.
They hate all of the interior defensive linemen in this class.
It's the worst ever, maybe. Like, literally almost ever in the history of the draft.
No, I know. It's 3 players, and then it's everybody else. Basically.
So does that make sense, though? Like, is Newsome closer to a first-round grade who's just a slight step behind Caleb Farley and Surtain and Horn, or is he closer to Eric Stokes? And that's where, I love Eric Stokes in the second round as an option for the Titans. He does everything well, and we know Vrabel likes corners that can tackle. He's a really physical player. So there's really good options at corner in the second round. So where is Newsome on their board? That's what I would want to know. I love the pick at 22 with a guy that you probably can plug and play right away. He can play inside, outside.
He's the most scheme versatile of any of the corners. And the thing that complicates this is Caleb Farley, of course. Back issues plural. coming out the week of the draft. Then, of course, unfortunately for him, hopefully he remains asymptomatic but testing positive for COVID-19. Which would be ridiculous if that has any kind of effect on his draft stock. I don't think that it would.
No.
But we don't know. We don't know at this point.
I am fascinated by the obsession with, Rondale Moore might have had a little bit of an injury. Caleb Farley might have had. Jeffrey Simmons had a major injury.
Yeah.
And I think he's worked out fine. So it's all about the Titans doctors, right? Like, we can all guess at what we think back problem this or knee problem that. Like, none of us are medical experts. And so the question is, what do the medical experts say about Caleb Farley? And to me, it's either you're on the board and they've cleared him, and then in which case he's the best corner in the draft, or he's not on your board at all. Yeah. To me, I don't think there's maybe a third round or something. I don't know. But, if the doctors clear him, you take him at 22. If the doctors haven't, you're waiting until the third or fourth round. And if he's available there, which we know is not going to happen, of course, that's where you've drawn the line in the sand with him as value. So.
615-737-1045. Buck Reising, Braden, Gall here live at Tin Roof on Demumbrian. Please. For me.
Yeah, I agree. July 3rd at this joint, when they set up the stage back, this is before your time. They'd set up the big stage out back, man. I've seen. I've needed a few rides home from Tin Roof on July 3rd before.
It's a particularly special place, and the beauty of it is our stories are not unique. This was the first. This was the first place that I got drunk in when I came to Nashville, and it seems like everybody else is the exact same.
Don't wear nice shoes.
615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. Jim Wyatt of Tennessee Titans Online has texted me, and he wanted me to do this during the break. But I figure since you're here now, we should do this now. He said, Jimmy says, can you get a pick for Braden for the Titans at 22? I'm doing a mock draft roundup and want to include him. So for Jimmy Wyatt and all the fair listeners, Braden.
On the spot?
On the spot. Well, I could stall for a little bit. Why don't No. Why don't I take a call and you think about who you want to give Jimmy for his
I'll just do it.
Media No.
I'll just do it.
No, don't do it. I'm going to take a call. Jeff from Clarksville, quick.
Disrespectful.
What's up, Jeff?
Yes.
What's up, Jeff?
Yeah. Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not much. Just enjoying the atmosphere here at Tin Roof.
Listen, guys, with our bust last year in the draft, I think if he's available, man, we should go after Twitty Pay. We want an edge rusher that is an absolute beast and mature beyond his years. I think that's the guy we should go after if he's available.
Appreciate the call, Jeff. 615-737-1045. Now, to see the top edge rusher fall to the top edge rusher in a class, I think
hand in the dirt edge rusher.
By almost all consensus at this point, the best down defensive lineman coming off the edge is Kwity Paye from Michigan.
Yeah, and a ton of growth and space for him to keep getting better. He's built like a brick. You know what house that I'm not allowed to say on the air.
Nope.
Like, that dude is just he's ripped up, man, and he's got space to get even better. And so, like you said, to have him still on the board at 22 feels a little unlikely to me, but he is leaps and bounds ahead of guys like Gregory Rousseau. Now, I will say this, if you talk about medicals, if you clear Jalen Phillips, who was the #1 player in the country coming out of high school, who is got some concussion issues or whatever, if you clear him medically, Jalen Phillips has top 10 talent. So that's how much risk do you want to take with a player like that as well. So I love the Kwity Paye pick. I think defensive players at Michigan, you can rip on Jim Harbaugh if you want to, but those defensive players get developed. They're physical. They play hard, and generally they're very well coached and disciplined players. Devin Bush, I would trust Kwity Paye coming out of Michigan. I like that pick a lot. Just put him next to Autry and Simmons and Landry and Dupree.
Depth.
Man, that's pretty salty up front.
Depth is so essential in this draft, even if he only ends up playing 30 or 40% of the snaps. I keep saying that number, but that's probably as close as it's going to get with two guys that you have already that you're paying, one in Autry and the other in Simmons, who is due a payday fairly soon. All right. They just need something else to provide depth when inevitably somebody gets hurt. So, what are you picking at 22, Braden Gall?
So I'm going to cop out like you did on my show when I said what's going to happen, and you gave me three names.
And the name of the show is?
You can tune into the 440 every single morning, the original Nashville short form podcast.
I'm gonna start a podcast fighting.
It's okay. I'm here for it.
Make your pick.
I'm here for it. So actually, I agree with two of the three names that you put out there. As this is John Robinson going back to his old ways of doing the obvious smart thing, which was Adoree Jackson, Corey Davis. We can evaluate the picks post-mortem if we want to.
Jack Conklin.
But he went out and filled obvious needs with really talented pieces that were value players on the board almost every time he made a pick in the last 4-5 rounds in the first round, other than the guy I'm not allowed to mention, which was the one time he went off the board, and that's cost him. So if we're going to go back to being obvious, it's Caleb Farley, it's Zaven Collins, it's Tevin Jenkins. Three positions of potential need, maybe not the highest need, but positions of need. The best players may be available at those three positions that not only match value for the draft pick, but also what the team needs. Now, what I want to see is them to trade back to like 27, 28, 29, 30. If that's where you feel comfortable taking your wide receiver, or still getting Greg Newsome, for example, if he's a little bit lower on your board, picking up an extra draft pick, adding capital, I want to see them trade back. Because corner and receiver are very, very deep this year. And if you could get them at 30 and 53 and then add a tight end, with your 75th pick that you acquire because you drop down, because you could add another tight end in there or something like that, or pick up a tackle, Trey Smith in the third round, whatever. That's what I want to see the Titans do. Is I want to see the receiver at 22 doesn't make sense to me unless somebody falls. And that's not going to – Jalen Waddle – sure, sign me up, but that ain't happening. So.
All right. Well, Jimmy has to write one name now, so give Jim White one name.
Zaven Collins would be the name that I think is the safest pick that makes the most sense and that is the most likely. But I could also see John Robinson having a player that none of us have talked about at all for 4 months.
Braden Gall of 440 Sports. Follow him at Braden Gall on the socials. We will come back and we will continue to take your reaction. We will also get Jack Gentry's best bets of AtoZ Sports, because there is money to be made for all of the lovely listeners on the NFL Draft. We'll do that and more live from Tin Roof on Demumbrian. I'm Buck Reising, and this is 104.5 The Zone. Day here at Tin Roof on Demumbrian. We are live broadcasting from 10 a.m. I have been here since 10 a.m. I've been here since before 10 a.m. It's the first time. I mean, I've been in Tin Roof in early morning hours, but never at 9:30.
We all
a little
have.
jarring for me. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. Braden Gall of 440 Sports is here, and so is Jack Gentry of AtoZ Sports, who joins us for his Best Bets segment. At Jack A. Gentry is where you can follow him. Good morning, Jack. How are you?
Good morning, Buck. I'm doing great. It's finally here, man. Draft day. This has been a hell of a week. I'm sure not only for us, but for everyone out there. So I'm glad tonight we finally get the ball rolling. It's going to be an interesting first round.
Yes, it is going to be an interesting first round, but the way to make it more interesting for the people listening at home, for the people who may want to get a little extra skin in the game, is to place a friendly wager on what is going to happen during tonight's first round. Now, we will do general draft prop bets with you, but in the first round, I know you have one for the Titans specifically that I saw that you put out at AtoZ Sports on Twitter and on Instagram. If you would like to throw my teammates a follow, they would greatly appreciate it.